So, okay, can someone copy the project and paste it on this call? The assignment, rather, the questions to the assignment.
Okay.
Okay, so basically they said we should go to AWS, right? Okay, so basically the question said create the same thing, right? Create a VPC and with a public and private subnet, and it should both have like an instance with it, right? And in a different region, right? So make sure that the IP addresses do not overlap, right? And create a VPC peering connection between the two VPC and ping the private instance in region from the private instance in region, okay? And that's what they meant here is ping the private instance from region A to region B, right? So this means that you have to SSH into the private instance in both regions. Okay, so what we're going to be doing first is this. We're going to come over to AWS and we're going to sign in. So basically they said we should use two regions, right? And you can see the name of the region up here, right? This is the London region. If you basically just click here, you can see different kind of region, right? So let's go to the default region, which is Virginia, US East one. Okay, and now they said here we should create a VPC, right? That's basically what they said. Okay, so let me just get the second IP address. Okay, so they basically said we should create a VPC, right? And you can, like I said before, come to this search box and type in VPC to get to this page, right? And here we are going to click on VPC, which we're already on, and click on create VPC, right? And here where it says create VPC, VPC only, like the method we did before. So I'm just going to be naming this VPC 30-1, right? And you can name it whatever you want, right? And the cider block, I'm going to give it 10.0.0.0, right? Then slash 16. So let me just copy this. And every other thing is going to be left as a default, right? Every other thing is going to be left as a default. So let's create this VPC and go back to your VPC. And here is our VPC that we created, right? And we are going to go to the subnet section and we are going to create two subnets, right? First, we're going to select the VPC that we just created, right, which is 31, right? And on our subnets, we're going to be calling this each subnet private, right? And here we are going to be adding a new CIDR block, right? And we are going to be changing this, right? So it's 10.0.1, right? And we are going to add a new subnet, right? And we're going to be calling this this is private, let's call this public, right? And here we're going to be basically posting this, right? And we will give this 24 and we'll put a value of 2 here, right? And basically that is all. So we can just go ahead and just create our subnet. Right. So now we have our public and private subnets, right? The next thing we want to do is to create an internet gateway, right, for our VPC, right, and we can call this internet gateway, and create internet gateway. Yeah. And next thing we want to do is we want to attach this internet gateway to a VPC. So we come here and we select the VPC we created, date 31, right, and attach the internet gateway. And now that our internet gateway is attached, the second thing we are now going to be creating is our NAT gateway, right? This is the second thing we're going to be creating, NAT gateway. So we'll click on this. And while you create a NAT gateway, this is one thing you should never forget to turn off, right? Because number one, it is not free, and number two, it takes a lot of money, right? So always remember to turn it off when you are done with this assignment. So first thing first, we're going to create a NAT gateway, and we will be naming the NAT gateway 31, right? And the subnet we're going to be choosing, right, is going to be, the NAT gateway is going to be in the public subnet, right? Because the NAT gateway routes traffic from the public subnet so that it can be able to access the internet. Are you getting what I'm saying? So we're going to be choosing it has to be the public. Don't choose the private subnet by mistake. It must be the public subnet. So we're going to be choosing this, and connectivity type public, right? And we're going to allocate an elastic IP to it, right? And so now you see that we have created an elastic IP, right? And it has been attached. So next thing we do is we create a NAT gateway. Okay, so now that our NAT gateway is up and running, right? The next thing we need to basically do here is to focus on our route tables, because that's the next important thing. So we'll go to our route tables and create route table, right? And we are going to be creating a route table for the private, or let's start with the public. For the public subnet, right, we're going to be creating a route table, and we're going to be adding the route table to our VPC we created, right? And we'll create the route table, right? And coming back to our route tables, we'll create another route table, and we're going to be calling this route table private, right? We'll be selecting the VPC we created, right, and create the private route table. So back here we should have two route table, public and private. So now we want to go into the public route table, right? We want to go into the public route table, and what we want to do now is we want to connect it to our public subnet, right? We want to associate it with our public subnet, right? So we're going to edit the subnet association, right? And we're going to be choosing the public subnet, right? Because this is the public route table, and we are going to be clicking on save association. And after we've done that, we need to now make changes to this route, right? So we edit the route and go to add rules, and we are going to be picking 0.0.0, right? We're going to also be choosing the internet gateway, and we are going to be choosing the internet gateway we created, 30-1-internet gateway, right? And we're going to be saving changes here, right? So automatically, any instance we now create in the public subnet, we automatically have access to the internet, right? So now we want to do the same thing for our private route table, right? So click here, and down here we need to do the subnet association. So we're going to click edit subnet associations, right? And we're going to choose the private because this is a private route table, right? So we're going to click on it, and after that we're going to edit the routes, right? And we're going to add new routes, and we're going to use the 0.0.0, and basically we are going to choose, instead of choosing the internet gateway, we're going to be scrolling down to choose the NAS gateway, and we will also be choosing this NAS gateway we created, 31, right? And we're going to save the changes. And now after creating this private NAS gateway, we are basically done, right, with this region. Are you getting what I'm saying? We're basically done with this region. So yeah, we're basically done with this region. So what I'll just do is I'll just right click on this my tab here, right click on it and click on duplicate, right? And now we're going to be focusing on the second region, right? we're going to be focusing on the second region. And the second region we're going to be focusing on, it is London. That's the second region we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be focusing on London. So let's scroll down to, you can pick whatever region you want to focus on, right? But for this tutorial, we're going to be looking at London, right? London, Europe, right? EU West 2, right? So we'll just click on that. Okay. So now that we're in the London region, we will have to recreate the same thing again in this region, right? So we have to go to our VPC and create a new VPC, right, for this region. So create VPC, VPC only, and we're going to call this VPC 32, right? You can, like I said again, you can name it whatever you want. And for our CIDR block, we are going to be using a different CIDR block, right? I've basically even forgotten the numbers. So let's check. Okay, so this is the second CIDR block we'll be using, 192.168.0.0/16, right? Because in the question it said that the what was it called? The IP addresses, right, should not overlap, right? So we need to create use two different kind of CIDR blocks so that we don't have a mix up in IP addresses, because that would be like an error. So pasting this here, we'll have the IP address or the CIDR block of 192.168.0.0 then /16, right? And every other thing is left as default. So we're going to create the VPC. And now our VPC is up and running. So if you come here, you see our VPC, right? Now we're going to be creating the subnets. We're going to be selecting on subnets and click on create subnets, right? So we're going to be selecting the VPC, which is the VPC we created, 32, right? Remember that this is the London region. This is the second region we're creating the VPC in. So we're going to click on this and we are going to first name the first subnet private, right? And in the private subnet, we are going to be using the same CIDR block, right, which is 24, and we will be using a 1 here, right? And the same thing, we're going to add a new subnet down here, and we're going to be calling this subnet public, right? Also, we'll also be making a change, and we'll be calling it 2. You can't use 1 again because um you will get an error if you use 1, because I've already used that particular CIDR block. So we'll be putting 24 here, and as you can see, as I'm writing this number /16/24, it shows you the amount of IP addresses you can get, right? If you use /16, you can basically get 65,000 IP addresses, right? But if you use /24, you can get 256 IP addresses. It just depends on you and your specifications, right? So this is what we have here, right? This is what we have here, our public and private, right? And we're going to create subnets. Exactly, we have our public and private subnet here, right? So next thing we want to do, like we did in the other region, you want to create an internet gateway, right? So like I said before, there is always going to be a default internet gateway that is always going to be here. So do not bother deleting this, right? So we're going to create internet gateway, and we're going to call this 30-2, right? Then dash IGW, which stands for internet gateway, and we're going to create internet gateway, right? And now next thing we want to do is to attach to VPC. So we will select our VPC, which is this one created, 32, right? And we're going to attach the internet gateway, right? And just doing that, we have basically made attached our internet gateway, right, to our VPC, right? So now that I've created an internet gateway, the next thing we want to do now is to also create a NAT gateway like we did in the other region. So click on the NAT gateway, and down here we want to also call it 32, right? So the subnet we're going to be selecting, like I said, the NAT gateway must always be created in the public subnet, right? Do not choose the private subnet, choose the public subnet, right? And we're going to select public here, leave everything as default here, and we're going to allocate an elastic IP address, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. As you can see here, the elastic IP address has been allocated, right? And we want to create the NAT gateway. Okay, so now that our NAS gateway is basically up and running, right? It's still pending though, but it will soon come up, right? Now that our NAS gateway is basically up and running, now the next thing we want to do is go to our route tables, right? We want to go to our route tables and we want to create two route tables, right? One for public, right? And we're going to be selecting a VPC, which is 32, right? And we're going to be creating this route table. And this for public, we're going to be adding it to a subnet. We're going to be doing a subnet association for it, right? And this is the public route table, so it's going to be associated with the public subnet, right? So save save association, right? And on the route, we want to edit this route, right? Since this is a public subnet, we are going to be using 0.0.0. 0.0.0 means just the whole internet, right? So, and we want to use our internet gateway for this, right? And since this is a public subnet, we use internet gateway for public subnet, we use NAT gateway for private subnet, right? So we're going to be selecting the internet gateway we created, right? And we're going to click save changes. Exactly. Now that we have everything going on fine here, we'll go back to our route tables, right? And we're going to create a private route table. And we're going to select a VPC that we already created, 32, right? And create the route table. Exactly. So now we need to do a subnet association, right? And we are going to click on edit subnet associations, right? And since this is a private route table, which is going to be connecting to a private subnet, we're going to be selecting the private subnet here, right? And we're going to save changes, right? And scrolling down the route, we also have to make changes to the route. We're going to edit this route. I'm going to add a new rule, right, that is going to be connecting to our NAT gateway like we did in the previous region, right? Since we have created a NAT gateway 32, we're going to click on that and save changes. So now that we have basically created all this and everything is up and running, right? So if you come back to this format tab that we have here, right, you can see this is the Virginia region and you can see this is the London region, right? So that's why I said when you do this, right click on this, you see a duplicate space, right, like we did before. So what we want to do now, since we have both VPC active, we want to pair the both of them, right? So if you come here and you scroll down a little bit, you see immediately under the NAT gateways, you see peering connections, right? So we're going to click on that. And after clicking on that, we're going to create a peering connection, right? And after clicking on create a peering connection, we're going to give it a name, right? So we're going to call it Teddy-connection, right? And we're going to select a local VPC to pair with, right? So basically, we are asked to select a VPC. So I'm going to be selecting this my VPC that is created in this region. Are you getting what I'm saying? So I'm going to be selecting that. And here you also see other options, right? Select another VPC to pair with, right? So account, if this VPC is in your account, you can still tick here, right? This VPC is still in our account, but if it's in another account, you can basically choose another account. But since it's still in our account, we're going to just choose this, right? And the region we want to pair with, like they said, we should connect to another region. So we're going to be basically ticking another region down here, and we're going to select the region that the VPC is in. Like I said, if you check here, London. So we have to come back here and select the region that our VPC is in. So we're going to select London, right? This is London, EUS2, London, Europe, right? So select that and our VPC ID. We'll have to come back here to click on our VPC and we'll have to get our VPC ID, right? So this is our VPC ID. We're going to copy this and come back here and we're basically going to paste that here, right? And pasting that here, we'll just basically create the peering connection. Exactly. So now after creating this parent connection, it has automatically sent a request, right, to this my London region, right? So that I can choose to accept that request or not. So on this my London region, I'll have to scroll down here also to peering connections, right? And I'll see the request. this is the request pending acceptance, right? So I'm going to click on the request, and I'm going to click on actions, right? And I'm going to click on accept request, right? And here it also bring out this more detailed option, but I'm going to be clicking on accept request, right? And if I reload this, as you can see, it is active, right? Now the both VPCs, two of the VPCs are both active, right? And what we will need to do is we will need to make some changes to our route tables, right? So after the request has been accepted, we will need to make some changes to our route table. Now coming back to this Virginia, right? We will need to go to our route tables, right? To the private route table. We need to go to the private route table, click on it, and we will need to also scroll down to this route, and we want to edit this route, right? So while editing this route, we basically want to add a we basically want to add the cider block of this VPC, right, that was created here, right? We basically want to add the cider block of this VPC that was created here. So we can just come to this other VPC, and basically we can check the cider block here, right? So this is the cider block, right? So we're going to be copying this, and we are going to be adding this here, right? Paste, exactly. And down here, we're also going to be using selecting peering connections, right? So just scroll down, you see peering connection. So select this, and you can see the peering connection we created, 30 connections. So click on this and save changes. Same thing we're also going to do here. So we're basically going to go to our route tables, right? In the London section, click on the private subnet, right? And we are going to edit routes, right? And basically, like I said, come to your VPC in this other region, right? Click on the VPC so that you can see the cider block, right? And when you come down, you see the cider block, and you can copy that, come here, right, to this other London region, and you can paste the cider block here. After pasting it, you scroll down to you see peering connections, and you pair it with the connection that was available. So like this, they are both connected now, but to be on the more safer side, we will need to do the same thing for our public route table, right? So we want everything to be connected, right? So click on edit rules again, add this, and we can basically just come back to your VPC, copy this, the cider block, right? Add it here, paste, and same thing we can do here, parent connections, select the parent connection and save changes for the public subnet. And same thing we can also do in this other region for the public subnet, or the public route tables rather. So we come to public, right, and scroll down, we can edit the route, and we can add new route, and we can just make some changes to this, which is 10.0.0, which is the route, the cider block for this VPC that is in the Virginia region, right? And down here we can scroll down to parent connections and select these parent connections, and we can also save changes. Okay, so it says 0.0.0 already exists. So let's check the error that we're having here. Okay, so it's supposed to be /16, not /0. So let's save changes. Okay, so now that our save changes, we can come back to our route tables, and as you can see, we have basically created a full public and private subnet, and we have paired the VPCs together, right? They are both paired. So now next thing we want to do now is to come over to our EC2 section, right? We are coming over to EC2 section on both regions, right? On both regions. So we'll come over to the EC2 section on both regions. So this is the EC2, this is the second EC2 section. And yes, we want to create an instance, right? We want to create an instance. But before we create an instance, the first thing we want to do is create a new security group, right? That we're going to be using for this instance that we created. So we're going to click on security group, right? And same thing here. Okay, let's just focus on this one for now, right? And we're going to click on create security group, right? And we are going to give the security group a name, which is SG, right? And the description also SG. And we're going to select the VPC we created. Automatically to select the default VPC for you. So select this VPC we created, which on my own, in my own case is 31, right? And we're going to add rules, right? So we're going to create a custom ICMP IPv4, which allows pinging, right? So we're going to click on that, and we're going to use anywhere IPv4, right? So same thing we're going to do for SSH. Same thing we're also going to do for port 80, which is it HTTP? Yes. And we are going to do the same thing here. And we're going to do the same thing for port HTTPS, which is port 443, right? And we will do the same thing. And lastly, we also, to be on the safer side, we want to also add all traffic, right? So we want to add all traffic IPv4, right? And with this, we can add one more rule to the outbound rules, right? Which will be um, all traffic also, all traffic, but this time we're going to be adding it on anywhere IPv6, right? So with what we have created now, we want to now save these changes, right? So we're going to create security group, right? So same thing we're going to be doing over here for the London region, right? So coming back to our security group, create security group, right? So we're going to be naming the security group SG, right? Change the VPC, select the VPC we created, right? Add rules, and we are going to be selecting certain rules, custom ICMP, right? IPv4 anywhere, add another rule, right? We are going to be selecting SSH, right? Anywhere IPv4. We're also going to be selecting HTTP, anywhere IPv4. We're also going to be selecting HTTPS, right? And we're going to be selecting anywhere IPv4. And we're also, lastly, we're going to be selecting the all traffic, anywhere IPv4, right? So when you guys go deeply into Amazon, you will understand that this kind of security group is actually not safe, right? But for this task, we're just going to be just looking into it and using it, right? So basically, this should be everything. And coming down here, we're going to be adding all traffic also, and we are going to be using anywhere IPv6 here. So with this set, we will be saving this, create security group for the London region. Now that we've created security group for both region, we now want to go to the instances, right? And this is the tricky part, right? So creating an instance on the private subnet means that you cannot SSH into the instance, right? You cannot there's no way you can SSH into the instance, right? But the funny thing is, the only way you can SSH into an instance that is in a private subnet is with an instance that is in a public subnet, which is also called there's a name they call it. Yeah, like if the name come back to me, I'll basically tell you guys. But that's the only way you can SSH to um, an instance in the private subnet, only with an instance in the public subnet, right? And this instance must be in the same VPC. I get what I'm saying, right? The subnet of the public subnet must be in the same VPC as the private subnet, right? So we're looking more into it. So yeah, basically the name is called version host, right? So you are basically going to use a version host to be able to SSH into the private instance. So how do we do that? So let's go to launch instance. and we are going to be launching an instance. We are going to name this instance public, right? And scrolling down, we're going to be selecting Ubuntu, free tier, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down, and we are going to be selecting a key pair, right? So like I said, it is required, so you need to create a key pair, right? And save it because it will still be of use. Yeah, so although in this section we're not going to be using a key pair. So coming back to the network settings, we're going to click on edit, and we're going to be changing the VPC from the default VPC to the 31. Remember, we're in the Virginia region. So yeah, from the default VPC to 31. And what is the name of this subnet? Public subnet. So if it is a public subnet, if it's a public instance rather, it is going to be in the public subnet, right? Not in the private subnet. So we're going to click public, right? And we are going to auto assign public IP address, right? So we're going to enable it, right? Do not miss this part, because if your instance does not have a public IP address, you won't be able to do what is going to be taught in this lecture, right? So like I said, we created a security group, so you can just click on select security group, and we have our security group here, right? So now that we have our security group, we can now launch the instance. Same thing we'll be doing for the London region so that things can go faster. So instances and launch instance. Okay. Okay, so let's just basically finish with this. Okay, so now let's launch another instance. We're going to be launching another instance. While this is still loading, let's launch another instance in the London region, and we're going to be calling this instance public, right? Just like we did in the Virginia region. I'm going to be selecting Ubuntu also, scrolling down, scrolling down. We have the type T2 micro free tier. We also have our key pair that we're just going to be selecting any random key pair because we're not going to be basically needing it. So VPC required, we're going to select a VPC 32, the one we created, right? And since this is a public instance, is going to be selected in the public subnet, right, or created in the public subnet, and we're also going to enable a public IP address also. We're also going to be selecting the security group that we created, which is SG, right? And coming down here, we're going to launch the instance also. Right now, we have our public instance running in the Virginia section. We're going to launch another instance, and we're going to call the instance private, right? We're going to call the instance private. Okay. Okay, so now that we are in our EC2 section, okay, so now we're going to be calling this instance private, right? We're going to be calling it private so we can differentiate it. And Ubuntu, we're going to be selecting Ubuntu, right? Free tier, free tier, free tier. We're going to be selecting a key pair, right? Any key pair, and we're going to be editing this, right? The network settings. So now here we're going to be selecting the VPC we created, and our subnet is not going to be public, right? It's going to be private because this is a private instance, right? And below we also have to disable the public. You can do either one, right? You can either enable it or disable it. It's up to you. It's your choice. I get what I'm saying. So anyone that suits you. So next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be selecting the existing security group. That's the security group we basically created, right? SG. And we are going to basically launch. Okay, so let me just make this, enable this so I can show you guys something, right? So we're going to launch this, And coming back here, we will have to do a launch another private instance in this our London region, or launch a private instance. We already have a public instance, so we want to launch a private one here. Okay, so we'll have to be looking into this instance section, coming back here. But first, let me first launch this private instance, right? And Ubuntu, right? So selected Ubuntu, free tier, select a key pair, right? And edit, right? So we're going to be selecting the VPC we created. And since this is a private instance, we're going to be clicking on the private subnet, not the public, right? And we also, let's just give it a public IP, because normally a private instance that's in the private subnet doesn't usually have a public IP, but we're just going to be selecting that, right? So now I'm going to select existing security groups and select the security group we created, which is SG, right? So scrolling down, we are also going to launch this new instance, right? So now that we both have a public and a private instance in both region, how do you now basically log in into the private instance, right? So now let's start with the private instance, right? So let's click on this, right? And let's try to connect, right? So either way you do it, either you pick out the IP address and try to log in on your system using the key pair, right? Or you use this EC2 instance connect, right? Either way you do it, you are going to get an error because it's not going to work. You won't be able to log into it, right? So let's just see how that is going to work. Okay, so this is the private instance that we created, right? This is the private instance created in the private subnet, and you see fails to connect to your instance, right? So this is the error you're always going to get. If you try logging in on your normal system, you also get connection timed out error, right? So you can't log in into a private instance that is in the private subnet, right? So let's just cancel this out and let us log in into the public, right? So but before we log into the public, let's copy the private IP address, because that's what we're going to be using to log into the that's what we're going to be using to log into the private instance. Okay, okay, so now let's go to our public instance section, and let's click on connect, and let's connect to the public instance, right? So in this space is where you need the key pair you selected for your private instance, and I'm guessing I should have my own present here, right? So automatically when you create an instance, you should be able to have access to it, right? So now this is where there is going to be issue, because I selected the wrong key pair, right? So now let's go back to our instances and let us delete this private instance that we have here, right? This is the private instance. We are going to be deleting it and we're going to be creating it again, right? So action, well, first let me check if the key pair that is present here. Okay, yes. So let's go back to our instances, and the instance we selected, which is the private, This is the private instance, and we are going to be destroying this instance, right? So terminate the instance, terminate, and we're going to be creating a new private instance, right? So let's click on launch instance, and as you can see, the public instance was able to connect, right? As you see down here, public, right? Because it is in a public subnet and it has access to internet gateway. Okay, so let's call this private 2, right? Private dash 2, right? And we're going to be calling this Ubuntu. We're going to be calling this Ubuntu, right? Ubuntu, and we're going to scroll down and we are going to select the private instance that I have here, which is this Digital Ocean, right? That is the instance. And if you scroll down a little bit, you can see it here. It's already created here. So if I select this, you can see the keep here, right? And let me try to edit this, and we are going to be using the like we did before. So this is the private instance. Let's try to enable this, and let's select this SG, right? And let's launch the instance, right? Now that instance is launching, let's try to create this our digital ocean. So basically how Amazon keep here works is that the keep here has to be in the same directory, or let me just use it that way. It has to be in the same directory where you want to log in. So now we have to use a nano, and we're going to create, and it has to be exactly the same name as the one you downloaded, right? So this is the name, Digital Ocean, right? The D is capital letter. So we're going to nano digital then ocean, right? Capital letter for the two. So dot pen. We're going to be calling it dot pen, right? Because it's a pen keep here, right? So we're going to click on enter, and we're also going to be clicking on this, and we are going to be doing on a normal day you're not supposed to share this private key with anybody, right? But since it doesn't really mean much and I'm going to be deleting it very soon, that's why it's going to be available here. So now we're going to select this and we're going to copy the private key. We're going to be pasting it inside this file that we created, right? And Control O, enter, Control X, right? And we do ls, we can see the file there, right? So now let's go back to our instance in the Virginia region, right? Our instance, and let's reload this, right? And our instance is basically already running, right? So now let's now see the IP address that was given to this instance, right? So let's try to connect to it, right? When we click on connect, you come here, right? Then you do SSH clients, right? You go to this SSH clients part and you click on, just basically follow all the steps that are here, right? So we'll first have to change the file modification, right? Right, and now after we've done that, the next thing we have to do is to connect your instance. You connect to your instance using the public IP address, right? And we can do that using this example below, right? So we'll just copy this, right? Come back here and paste. Okay, so are you saying that this is basically not going to work because we're using the public IP address, right? So let me try to cancel this and let me now use the private IP address of this instance, right? Which is this, right? So let's copy this and come back here and we will basically paste that here and enter. And now it's asking me if I want to save this fingerprint, and I'll click yes. And Okay, so yes, and now we're basically inside the private instance, right? Someone is basically raising his hand. Please, I will attend to your question after the class, please. Okay. So now basically we have basically done this. Now we're in the private instance, right? And as you saw before, we could not SSH into the private instance from any other way except from a subnet that was inside the VPC, right? So it's a little bit complicated, but yeah. So now coming back to this London region, they said we should ping this private key, this private what's it called? This is our private instance that we have here. They said we should ping it, right? So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to basically be copying the private IPv4 address, right? So we're going to copy this, come back here, and we're going to type in ping, and we're going to paste that there, right? So after we paste that, we're going to click enter. And as you can see, it is working perfectly well. It is able to ping the instance in another region, right? Because of the VPC peering, right? When you pair the both VPCs together, they automatically become one network. So they can basically communicate to each other. So I'm guessing this covers the whole assignment,
I hate my wife.
right?
You feel as if I hate my wife.
Okay, yeah, now you can unmute your mic and ask your question. I'm guessing this covers your assignment.
Hello, good evening, mentor.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, thank you. But is it a must that we get our key from DigitalOcean, or
No, no,
can
no,
we
no, no,
just?
no. It's not a digital version key. That was just the name I gave to it. I get what I'm saying. You
Oh,
can name
okay,
it whatever
okay,
name you want to name it.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, so now let me now basically, before this class ends, let me show you guys how you can delete everything because now your NAT gateway will be piling a lot of bill for you, right? So you can just stop this, just press Ctrl C, and you're basically done, right? So let's cancel this and come back to this region, which is the Virginia region. And to start with, we'll be deleting the instances first, right? We'll be deleting the instances first. Click on the second public one, right? So instance state terminate instance, right? So terminate these two instances, and yes, so it says successfully terminated, right? So you can reload to be sure, right? And you're seeing here it is shutting down, shutting down. This one's already terminated, right? So after terminating this, the next thing you want to do is we want to go to the security group, right? Which is here. And we also want to destroy this SG security group we created, right? So we want to click on that and we want to click on action and delete security group, right? Okay, so it is still in a way connected to the instance. That's why we can't delete it, right? So let's just pause this for now. And now let's go to the VPC section, right? Let's go to the VPC section and let's start deleting all the NAT gateway, internet gateway, and subnets there, right? But the most important thing you should delete first is the NAT gateway. So we come down to the NAT gateway, select it, right? The NAT gateway, come down to select it and click actions and delete NAT gateway. So we're going to type in delete. Let me just copy this because we will need it in a whole lot of places. So delete, and yes, our NAT gateway is deleting already, right? And don't forget that we created an elastic IP, because the way elastic IP works is that if it is not allocated to a particular service, right, it will automatically start billing you every hour. So since the NAT gateway is still deleting, we can't delete the elastic IP yet. So we have to move to something else, right? Either we delete the subnets, right? We'll have to delete the two subnets we created, public and private, right? Action, delete subnet, Okay, so it says one out of two subnets cannot be deleted. So let's just paste this and delete. Okay, so it was the private subnet that was deleted. The public subnet cannot be deleted right now. So now let's just delete the internet gateway. Come in here, we click action, detach from VPC, and it has been detached from VPC. Also, we want to also delete it, right? Delete internet gateway, paste the delete, right? So delete internet gateway, and our internet gateway has been deleted, right? And next thing we want to do is the peering connection. We also want to delete this peering connection too. So select on it, action, delete peering connection, right? So delete related route tables, right? So we want to select this option, the first option, right? And we also want to paste this delete here. So we can delete that. And now that it has been deleted, which it shows here, we go to our NAT gateway and be sure that our NAT gateway has been deleted also, right? So now it shows us deleted here. So we go to the elastic IP, and now the next thing we want to do is release the elastic IP. Release. Now that it has been released, we now want to okay, so let's release it again. Let's see what happens, right? So let's release the elastic IP. Okay, so we're going to just chill first and we'll come back to that later. So now going to the route tables, we will select these two route tables and we want to delete the two route tables, right? So it's basically saying, so now we also want to delete the internet gateway. Okay, we have deleted the internet gateway. Now we want to delete the public subnet, right? So we're going to be deleting the public subnet and paste, delete. After deleting the public subnet, the next thing we want to do is delete the public route table. Coming down here and select the public route table and delete and paste, delete. Right? Let's come back to this elastic IPs, reload it. So basically it has been deleted when we deleted it. No elastic IP found in this region. Right? So next thing we want to do is to delete our VPC too. So this VPC is selected, delete VPC, right? And paste and delete. Right. So let's basically reload this, and you can see it's our default VPC that is here, right? Going down to our internet gateway, it has been deleted, route tables deleted, NAS gateway deleted, elastic IP deleted, right? And our peering connection also has been deleted, right? Let's now go back to our VPC dashboard, right? Coming back to our VPC dashboard, we also want to delete the security group that was present there, right? So this is security group. We want to delete it. Okay, seems like it has been deleted already. So let's come back here. One VPC, the NAT gateway has been deleted. Zero internet gateway, right? So now let's come back to this region, which is the London region, right? And let's go to our instances and let us delete the two instances here. So this one and the second one, right? Instance state and terminate instance, terminate. Okay, so now that the instance is terminating, the next thing we want to do is go to our VPC section, right? Click on VPC, that's in the London region. Right, and let's try something. Let's see if we can delete this VPC and basically everything attached to it will basically delete. So let's try that out. delete VPC. Okay, so it basically says unable to delete. I'm guessing that it only works if you use Terraform to create all this. So we'll have to do the same work all over again, but don't forget what to delete first is the NAT gateway, right? We want to delete the NAT gateway. Exactly, and the peering connection also, right? As you can see, it has been deleted, right? The peering connection has been deleted, NAT gateway deleted, right? And we want to move to the internet gateway. Okay, so it can't detach. So let's first delete the subnets. Action, delete subnet. Okay, so how many minutes is basically remaining here? Under a minute. So this is basically going to be the end of this class, right? I'll be dropping the recording of the video in the group, right? If you have any question, send it to the group. Okay, so now that we have deleted our subnets, we deleted the public and private, so we want to delete our route tables now. So we're going to be selecting the public and the private route tables, and action delete route table. Let's press the delete button here and click on delete. Right, now that I've deleted the public route table, okay, seems like we can't delete this private route table. Okay, so we can delete it. Let's just click on delete. Okay, so we have deleted both route tables, our subnet also, right? Now we want to delete our internet gateway, which is now possible. So we want to detach from VPC, right? And now we want to delete the internet gateway. We now want to paste our delete here. Exactly. So now we are done with all this. We also want to delete our elastic IP. But first, we need to release the elastic IP, and it has been released, right? So basically, that should be everything. Now we also want to delete our VPC, right? Lastly, we want to delete our VPC, right? And we can just paste delete here and delete. Exactly. So now we are basically done with everything. Let's check out the security groups also. There was a security group we created. Okay, seems like it also deleted by default, right? So now let's go back to our dashboard. This is the London region. One VPC, the NAT gateway was deleted, subnets, 3 subnets, VPC peering connection was deleted also, one route table, one internet gateway, which is default, right? And one security group, right? So every other thing here looks fine, right? And we can check out our EC2 space, right? So let's basically cancel this. Same thing here in the Virginia region, everything has been deleted, right? But let's just check our NAT gateway again. So it also deleted. Now let's go to our EC2 space, right? So now that we're here in our London region, we want to see, okay, instances running, there is 0, right? 0 elastic IP also. And the key pairs you have are has always been there. So now let's check our security group. Let's see. Okay, so it's also the default security group that's here. So we're done with this region. We're just basically going to cancel this out, right? And now the Virginia region also. Key pairs 5. It doesn't actually take money, so it doesn't build, so it doesn't really matter, right? Elastic IP is 0, running instances 0, the deleted instances is 3, right? And our security group, let's check that one last time, right? Also default. So basically, this is everything based on the task, right? And the recording will also be dropping very, very soon. Okay, so that's the end of this class.